There's a company you've probably never heard of called Hero Motocorp. They are based in India, and in March of 2025, they dispatched 550,000 motorcycles in a single month, a massive monthly volume. To put that in perspective, Tesla, the company that dominates every business headline on the planet, delivered about 336,000 vehicles in the entire first quarter of that year. Different products, sure. But in raw volume, Hero Motocorp moved more units in 30 days than Tesla did in 90. And Hero isn't even necessarily the biggest motorcycle company in the world. By most global measures, that title goes to Honda. And what Honda just accomplished should have been front-page news everywhere. It wasn't. That was 2025, and the milestone received surprisingly little attention in Western business media. In May of 2025, Honda held a ceremony at their factory in Ahmedabad, India, to announce that they had produced their 500 millionth motorcycle, 500 million motorcycles. Milestone. Built across 76 years, starting with the Dream D-Type in 1949. That's roughly one Honda motorcycle for every 16 human beings currently alive on this planet. They reached their first 100 million in 1997. 48 years. The most recent 100 million took 6 years. The pace is accelerating, not slowing. Honda now operates 37 factories across 23 countries, builds over 20 million motorcycles every single year, and according to their own corporate briefing in January 2025, holds approximately a 40% share of the entire global motorcycle market. And their most iconic model, the Super Cub, has sold over 100 million individual units since its launch in 1958. That makes it widely considered the most manufactured motor vehicle in human history. Not the most manufactured motorcycle, the most manufactured motor vehicle, period. More than the Volkswagen Beetle at 21 million. More than the Toyota Corolla at around 50 million. More than the Ford F-150 at roughly 40 million. The Super Cub outsold all three of those legends, and it did it on two wheels for a fraction of the price. So why haven't you heard about any of this? Because there is a $100 billion industry hiding in plain sight. Depending on how you define the category, the global motorcycle and two-wheeler market generates somewhere between $75 billion to over $150 billion in annual revenue. The range depends on whether you include scooters, mopeds, and electric two-wheelers. But even using the most conservative estimates, this industry shipped over 60 million units in 2024, near all-time highs. Compare that to the roughly 70 million passenger cars sold globally in the same year. Two-wheelers are approaching the same ballpark as cars in total unit sales worldwide. I mean, think about that for a second. Two wheels are almost keeping pace with four, and the financial media acts like this market does not exist. How does a $100 billion plus industry fly completely under the radar of Western consciousness? The answer starts with geography. 78% of all motorcycle sales happen in the Asia-Pacific region. The biggest market by far, the absolute epicenter of this industry, is a country that most Western business coverage barely acknowledges as a vehicle market at all. India. India didn't just pass 20 million domestic two-wheeler sales in calendar year 2025. They blew past it. And the ratio between two-wheelers and cars in India is nothing like what Western viewers would expect. For every car sold in India, more than 4 two-wheelers are sold. The numbers are 20 million plus two-wheelers versus about 4.3 million passenger cars. According to India's National Family Health Survey, 54% of all Indian households own a motorcycle or scooter. Only 8% own a car. In rural India, car ownership falls to just 4%, and this shift happened fast. In 1992, only 8% of Indian households owned a two-wheeler. By 2021, that number exploded to 54%. Car ownership in the same period went from 1% to 8%. Two-wheelers completely dominated the growth. The economic logic is inescapable. For a huge portion of the population, annual household income is only a few $1,000s. A car starting at $5,000 is a fantasy. A Hero HF Deluxe motorcycle starts at roughly $700 and delivers 75 to 90 kilometers per liter of fuel. That is not a luxury. That is a lifeline. That is how you get to work, pick up groceries, take your kid to school, and keep a family functioning on a tight budget. Hero Motocorp's Splendor model alone moves over 1 million units per year, making it one of the best-selling vehicles of any type on Earth. The company dispatched nearly 690,000 units in September 2025 alone during India's festive season. Hero also became the first Indian company to surpass 125 million cumulative two-wheeler production units, a milestone that would make any car manufacturer jealous. And here's the comparison that should rewrite how you think about the global auto industry. India sold more two-wheelers in 2025 than the United States sold passenger cars. India's total two-wheeler market is roughly 36 times larger by volume than the entire United States motorcycle market, which is around 550,000 annual units. And no, I'm not making that up. But India's motorcycle story isn't just about massive volume of cheap commuter bikes. One of the most improbable corporate comeback stories in any industry happened right here, and it involves a brand you might actually recognize. Royal Enfield. In the year 2000, Royal Enfield was dead, not dying, dead. The company was producing about 6,000 motorcycles a month and could only sell around 2,000. Warehouses filled with unsold bikes. The motorcycles themselves were unreliable, outdated, and nobody wanted them. The parent company, Eicher Motors, ran 15 different business divisions, and nearly all of them were bleeding money. Royal Enfield was months away from shutting its doors permanently. Then a 26-year-old named Siddhartha Lal took over as chief executive officer. He was the son of the company's chairman, and plenty of people assumed he was just the founder's kid playing executive. His first move silenced all of them. He shut down 13 of the company's 15 business divisions. 13 out of 15 gone. He bet everything, the entire company's future, on the one thing almost everyone else had given up on: motorcycles. This decision seemed small at the time. It wasn't. Lal personally rode every motorcycle in the Royal Enfield lineup. He identified the engineering problems himself, overhauled quality control, and completely repositioned the brand. He didn't try to compete with Honda and Hero on cheap commuter bikes. He leaned into Royal Enfield's heritage and soul, targeting riders who wanted something with character, something that felt different from the sea of generic two-wheelers flooding Indian roads. From 25,000 units a year in 2000, Royal Enfield grew to over 1 million units sold in fiscal year 2025, the first time in the company's history they crossed that threshold. That's a 40-fold increase. And with strong double-digit growth continuing into fiscal year from 2025 to 2026, they show no signs of slowing down. They now dominate India's premium mid-size motorcycle segment, export to over 50 countries, operate CKD assembly plants in Thailand, Brazil, and Bangladesh, and their parent company Eicher Motors just posted its best financial results ever. Revenue hit 188 billion Indian rupees for fiscal year 2025. Siddhartha Lal bet a dying company on motorcycles when he was 26 years old. That bet built an empire worth billions. If that story happened in Silicon Valley, there'd be a Netflix documentary about it already. But it happened in India, in the motorcycle industry, so almost nobody outside that world has heard it. And India's motorcycle economy doesn't stop at manufacturing and sales. The country's massive gig economy runs almost entirely on two wheels. India has millions of gig workers, and the vast majority of those working in food and package delivery ride budget motorcycles, such as the Bajaj Platina. Zomato, one of India's largest food delivery platforms, employs hundreds of thousands of delivery riders. Rapido, a ride-hailing service built entirely around motorcycle taxis, serves 25 million customers with over 1 million riders. These aren't side hustles. For millions of Indian workers, a motorcycle is their entire business model, their office, their livelihood, all rolled into one. India also exported over 4 million two-wheelers in fiscal year 2025, spreading its motorcycle influence across Africa, Latin America, and the Middle East. Bajaj Auto commands 39% of India's two-wheeler export market and ships to over 70 countries. And in a symbolic shift of global motorcycle power that Western media completely ignored, India's Bajaj Auto completed a deal worth 800 million euros to take a controlling stake in Austria's KTM in November 2025, rescuing the prestigious European performance brand from bankruptcy. Pure Mobility is being renamed Bajaj Mobility. Think about what that means. An Indian motorcycle company now controls one of Europe's most iconic performance brands. The power dynamics in this industry have completely flipped, and the Western world barely noticed. But India is just the biggest motorcycle market by volume. The density story gets even more extreme when you head southeast. Vietnam. Vietnam has 77 million registered motorcycles for a population of about 100 million people. According to Vietnam's General Statistics Office survey for 2024, a staggering 89.4% of Vietnamese households use motorbikes or motorcycles. Only 9% own a personal car. Motorcycles account for 85 to 90% of all road traffic in the country. When you see those incredible overhead drone shots of Ho Chi Minh City or Hanoi with rivers of motorcycles flowing through intersections like water through a funnel, that is not a special event or rush hour. That is Tuesday. In Vietnam, the word Honda became the generic term for motorcycle. You do not ask someone what kind of motorcycle they ride. You ask them about their Honda, even if it is a Yamaha or Suzuki. Honda Vietnam holds around 80% market share and sold nearly 2.9 million motorcycles in 2024. The country manufactures most of its motorcycles domestically, with Japanese brands running huge local production facilities. The entire Vietnamese economy pulses to the rhythm of two-stroke and four-stroke engines, which, looking back, is probably the most successful accidental branding in automotive history. When your company name replaces the actual product name in an entire country's vocabulary, you have won marketing forever. Indonesia takes the crown for sheer absolute numbers. 132 million registered motorcycles as of 2023, with 85% household ownership. They sold 6.3 million new units in 2024. Combined, the ASEAN motorcycle market exceeded 15 million units in 2025, representing roughly a quarter of all global sales and generating over $30 billion in revenue. Taiwan holds what might be the world record for motorcycle density, with roughly 14 million scooters for 23 million people, which works out to one motorcycle for every 1.7 people. But Indonesia's most important motorcycle story isn't about a manufacturer. It's about what happens when you build an entire tech ecosystem on the back of two wheels. In 2010, a company called Gojek launched in Jakarta with 20 motorcycle taxi drivers and a simple call center. 20 guys on bikes and a phone number. That was the entire business. Jakarta had legendary traffic gridlock, and motorcycle taxis, known locally as ojeks, were the fastest way through it. Gojek formalized the system with an app. By 2021, Gojek was valued at $10 billion, making it Indonesia's first decacorn startup. It merged with e-commerce platform Tokopedia, formed a holding company called GoTo, and went public on the Indonesia Stock Exchange. Today it is a 20-plus service super app handling food delivery, payments, logistics, streaming, and financial services for hundreds of millions of users across Southeast Asia. All of it was built because motorcycle taxis could navigate traffic that cars physically could not get through. A similar story played out in the Philippines, which is now the fifth largest motorcycle market on Earth, with 2.37 million units sold in 2025. Angeline Tam founded a motorcycle taxi app called Angkas after sitting in a 6-hour traffic jam in Metro Manila. 6 hours, sitting in a car, watching motorcycles weave past. The irony is that motorcycle taxis remained technically illegal under Philippine law for years, but the demand was so overwhelming that the government eventually created a pilot program. When your cities are so gridlocked that an illegal transportation service becomes indispensable, that tells you something about how badly the world needs motorcycles. Pay attention to that pattern, because it explains everything about why this market matters and why the West keeps missing it. If you are finding this valuable, hit that subscribe button. I cover deep dives into hidden markets and overlooked industries every week. Now, while Asia's motorcycle markets were maturing into massive established ecosystems, something explosive was happening on the other side of the world. The growth rate is unlike anything the motorcycle industry has ever seen. Sub-Saharan Africa went from around 5 million motorcycles in 2010 to an estimated 27 million by 2022. That is over 400% growth in 12 years. The Africa motorcycle market is valued at roughly $4 to $5 billion and projected to reach over $6 billion by 2033. Over 30 million commercial motorcycles now operate across the continent, with about 80% used as taxis or for delivery. The heart of this entire phenomenon has a name: the boda boda. The term originated in the 1980s from border-to-border motorcycle carriers operating between Uganda and Kenya. Today, the boda boda economy is a lifeline for tens of millions of people. Kenya alone has 1.4 million registered boda bodas that support an estimated 6 million indirect livelihoods. That's roughly 10% of Kenya's entire population, whose economic survival connects to motorcycle taxi economics. Riders collectively move nearly $8 million through the Kenyan economy daily. In Uganda, boda boda driving is the second largest employer in the entire country after agriculture. Across East Africa, an estimated 3 million motorcycle taxi drivers earn their daily living on two wheels. Nigeria dwarfs even those numbers. The country has somewhere between 10 and 15 million motorcycles in use, with over 8 million operating as commercial okadas for passenger transport. Nigeria accounts for roughly 60% of all motorcycle sales on the African continent. And here is where the story takes a turn nobody in Western media expected. Africa is not just adopting gasoline motorcycles. It is leapfrogging directly to electric, and the startups leading that charge are some of the most fascinating companies you have never heard of. Spiro has become the largest electric motorcycle deployment in Africa, with over 80,000 electric motorcycles operating across 6 countries, and more than 2,500 battery swap stations. Time magazine named them one of the 100 most influential companies of 2024. They have raised over $230 million in funding, including a single $100 million round in October 2025. That was the largest investment ever made in African two-wheeled electric mobility. A Swedish-Kenyan company called Rome manufactures the Rome Air electric motorcycle at around $1,500, with a range of 180 kilometers, specifically designed for boda boda riders. They have a factory in Nairobi with an annual capacity of 50,000 units. In Rwanda, a company called Ampersand operates more than 5,700 electric motorcycle taxis with a battery swap network and has achieved a 98% rider retention rate because the economics are simply better than gasoline. Riders charge up in under 2 minutes at a swap station and save money every single day. Kenya's electric motorcycle adoption curve is one of the steepest on the planet. Electric motorcycles went from 0.5% of new registrations in 2021 to a projected 15.3% by 2025. That blows past the critical 5% threshold that typically signals mass adoption is coming. A Spiro electric motorcycle costs about $800. In a market where a $700 motorcycle can shift a family's entire economic trajectory, that price point changes everything. Now here's the part that should make every Western investor sit up and pay attention. The global electric motorcycle story is splitting into 2 completely different realities, and the gap between them tells you everything about why this industry's blind spot exists. In China, there are an estimated 420 million electric two-wheelers in operation. That's roughly 1 for every 3 Chinese citizens. Annual production exceeds 45 million units. The global leader Yadea has sold over 100 million electric two-wheelers in total and is expanding factories into Indonesia, Vietnam, and Mexico. India's electric two-wheeler market crossed 1.15 million units in fiscal year 2025, growing 21% year over year. The market is fiercely competitive. TVS Motor overtook Ola Electric as the segment leader. Bajaj Chatak surged 39%. Ather Energy grew 59%. The Taiwanese company Gogoro pioneered battery swapping. It holds 72% of Taiwan's e-scooter market and has now expanded into India through a partnership with Hero Motocorp. Meanwhile, in the Western world, the electric motorcycle space is essentially a graveyard. Swedish company Cake filed for bankruptcy in February 2024 after selling roughly 6,000 motorcycles total across its entire existence. Italian manufacturer Energica declared insolvency in late 2024. Canadian startup Damon Motorcycles collapsed without ever delivering a single production motorcycle to a customer. Livewire Harley-Davidson's electric spin-off that they valued at $1.77 billion during its 2021 SPAC merger, sold just 612 motorcycles in all of 2024 and 653 in 2025. Their original projections called for over 15,000 annual units. Zero Motorcycles, the longest surviving Western electric motorcycle brand, managed only 1,944 units in the first 9 months of 2025. If you are wondering how that is even possible when every headline screams that electric is the future, the answer is actually painfully simple. Electric motorcycles are booming in markets where two-wheelers are essential, everyday, non-negotiable transportation, where the math on daily fuel savings pays for the price difference in months, not years, where an $800 electric motorcycle replaces a $700 gasoline one and saves a rider money from day one. In the West, motorcycles are recreational products, weekend toys, lifestyle accessories. When you do not need a motorcycle to survive, the value proposition for going electric at a premium price falls apart completely. This is the exact same dynamic that explains why the entire motorcycle market is invisible to Western audiences in the first place. And the numbers prove it beyond any argument. The US motorcycle market peaked at 1.1 million annual sales in 2005 and 2006. Since then, it has been stuck around 500,000 units per year, and first half 2025 sales dropped another 9%. The customer base is shrinking and aging simultaneously. The median age of a US motorcycle owner was 27 in 1985. By 2018, it had climbed to 50. Young Americans are not buying motorcycles the way their parents did, and the riders who do buy are spending more on fewer bikes. Harley-Davidson, the most iconic American motorcycle brand in history, fell to third place in the US market in 2025, behind both Honda and Kawasaki. Their domestic retail sales declined 25% over 3 years. New motorcycle prices in America range from $12,000 to $16,000 on average, with Harleys starting at $27,000 and climbing north of $55,000. Decline. Compare that to what is happening in the rest of the world. In India, a brand new motorcycle costs less than a decent used smartphone in America. In Africa, an electric motorcycle costs less than 1 month's rent in most US cities. The products themselves exist in completely different economic universes, which means they serve completely different purposes. Global. In the United States, the vast majority of motorcycle riding is recreational, a weekend hobby, a sunny Saturday afternoon thing, something you choose to do. Globally, that picture looks nothing like America. Most motorcycle use worldwide is personal commuting or commercial delivery. Commuters. The dominant global motorcycle segment, commuter bikes under 200 cubic centimeters that cost under $1,000, accounts for more than half of all worldwide sales. These are the bikes that Western audiences have never seen, never heard of, and never will encounter at their local dealership. They do not show up at Sturgis. They do not appear in Harley ads. They are not featured in any Western motorcycle magazine, but they transport more people every day than any other type of motor vehicle on the planet. Dominant North America accounts for just 3.1% of global two-wheeler sales by volume. India alone generates over $36 billion in motorcycle revenue annually. The entire US motorcycle market generates roughly $6 billion. When an American financial journalist covers the motorcycle industry, they are looking at 3% of the real market and treating it like the whole picture. It is like writing about the global film industry by only covering movies released in Belgium. You would get a technically accurate but wildly misleading view of reality. Misleading, and that perception gap has real consequences. It means Western investors ignore the fastest growing vehicle segments on Earth. It means Western media treats a Gojek YPO as a regional curiosity instead of the infrastructure story it actually is. It means a company like Hero Motocorp, which sells more vehicles per month than Tesla does per quarter, gets zero coverage on CNBC, while Tesla's stock price gets discussed every single day. Consequences. But the markets that actually dominate this industry are not slowing down. They are accelerating. Latin America is one of the fastest growing motorcycle regions on Earth right now, with first half 2025 sales climbing nearly 19% year over year. Brazil's market essentially doubled from under 1 million annual units in 2018 to over 1.8 million in 2024. Honda's massive factory in Manaus, deep in the Brazilian Amazon, produces 6,500 motorcycles every single day. Accelerating. The technology side is evolving fast too. The connected motorcycle market, meaning bikes equipped with smart features like radar-based adaptive cruise control, collision warning systems, and vehicle-to-vehicle communication, is projected to grow from $460 million in 2025 to $3.4 billion by 2032 at over 33% annual growth. BMW, Ducati, and Kawasaki are all racing to add these features to their premium lineups. Technology. But the real future might not be about what is on the motorcycle. It might be about how you charge it. Battery swap technology, which Gogoro perfected in Taiwan with over 2,500 stations and 644,000 subscribers, is now being deployed across Africa by Spiro, Ampersand, and Rome. A battery swap takes under 2 minutes. It completely eliminates range anxiety, and it separates the battery cost from the vehicle cost, which makes the upfront price of an electric motorcycle dramatically more affordable for the people who need it most. Gogoro has already expanded into India through a partnership with Hero Motocorp, which means battery swapping could soon reach the world's largest motorcycle market. If that happens, the scale of the electric transition in two-wheelers could dwarf what is happening in the car market. The real question is not whether the motorcycle market is big enough to matter. It obviously is. The real question is how long Western media and Western financial markets can keep ignoring an industry that produces 62 million vehicles a year, generates well over $100 billion in annual revenue, employs tens of millions of people directly, and serves as the primary form of motorized transportation for over 1 billion human beings. Honda has built 500 million motorcycles. India sells more two-wheelers than America sells cars. Vietnam has more registered motorcycles than adult citizens. Africa added 22 million motorcycles in 12 years. A $700 motorcycle in Kenya supports 6 million livelihoods. A 26-year-old CEO turned a bankrupt company into a billion-dollar empire selling mid-size motorcycles. 20 motorcycle taxi drivers in Jakarta became a $10 billion super app. And almost none of it made the evening news. This is not a niche market. This is not a sideshow. This is how most of the world actually moves. And the fact that almost nobody is talking about it says a lot more about our blind spots than it does about the industry itself. If this video shifted how you see the world even a little bit, subscribe, because I guarantee there are more massive industries hiding in plain sight, and we are going to find every single one of them.